Okay, did everybody get enough to eat? Did you get enough to eat? Yes? Everyone got enough to eat? Good. What I thought it was very good. Would you agree? Yes. And a special thank you to Vicki Lewis and my lovely daughter Abigail. I think they were the main ones that did most of the work. Did you have anything to say about the food? Did anybody have any questions? It's just yummy stuff, not super complicated. It's like healthy, simple. There you go.
I think I could even make it.
Yeah. Okay, so this evening is we're making a little bit of a shift. For those of you that have come to our programs in the past here, Dinner with the Doctor, we've had a meal, and then myself or some other physician has presented a health topic. And we've done all sorts of different things over the years. So now we're kind of shifting. It's still having to do with health, but now we're focusing more on the spiritual aspect of health and healthy spirituality. And so tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about the connection between our spiritual life and physical health. I actually did a whole presentation on that, I think 2 years ago. We went through a bunch of the research. So tonight I don't have a lot of research for you. I'll just kind of mention the highlights of what's been found. And then we're actually moving into more of a how-to mode on spirituality. And one of the things I'd like to say is this program, I put it together in such a way that it's really intended for anyone who wants to develop a deeper, more robust sense of spirituality. And so that hopefully will encompass all of us, whatever religious or spiritual background we're from. I'm sure that we have a variety of different belief systems, and hopefully we can come together in this journey of finding authentic spirituality, and we're going to be respectful of one another. And I hope that this becomes a meaningful journey for all of us together over the months ahead. And we are recording this, and we are planning to put it up online somewhere so that people can go back and review. And also, if you have friends that maybe weren't able to be here tonight, or maybe they're not interested yet, but maybe they, after you share with them how wonderful it is, maybe they'll be interested later on, and so that you can refer them to watch this and join in the journey along with us. So I'm hoping that as the months go by, you'll bring more people, and that we'll have a packed out room here over the next. So we actually put on the schedule 3 meetings. So this one tonight, and then in November, first Monday in November, and the first Monday in December. But I actually have penciled in on my presentation 7 different presentations. So that's actually going to take us through the winter. And 7 always seems like a good number. I don't know why it always seems to come out that way. But so I have a lot of material to cover. And we're going to start pretty basic tonight. So if you feel like you already have a good sense of spirituality in your life, this might seem a little bit basic, but as with most things, the fundamentals are the fundamentals. And going back to basics is good for everybody, almost all the time, for almost everything. So hopefully you won't be offended if this seems basic to you. And on the other hand, it may be a little different from what you've heard or experienced, and that's okay. But I do want to start with just recognizing the fact that we may have differences, and we want to be respectful of one another and our different beliefs, our different places in life, and where we are with spirituality or religion and all of that. So having said that, I'm just kind of curious of what we have here tonight as far as kind of our basic concepts. So let me just ask, is there anyone here who, and before I ask the question, let me say, if you're not comfortable answering the question, you don't have to. You can just sit and look at me like you didn't hear the question, and that's okay. Nobody will know that you're just not answering the question, I guess. Anyway, so is there anyone here tonight that would characterize yourself as spiritual but not religious? You know, I meet a lot of people that, one of the things I do as a physician, every new patient, almost every new patient, not 100%, but I'm working toward that. I always like to ask if you have a religious preference. And then I get all kinds of interesting answers. And in fact, that's actually recommended now by many of the certifying bodies, and in fact, the federal government itself recommends that physicians should ask and should know their patient's religious preference for a variety of reasons, because if for no other reason, sometimes people's belief system impacts the way they're willing to receive health care. So at the very least, we should know because of that. But it's kind of interesting. So I didn't see any hands shooting up.
I would have.
You.
I think that you'd rather define the words really yet.
Yeah, well.
But I think in my definition,
Okay.
I'd rather be spiritual than religious.
Okay.
That's,
Yeah, so we're going to talk about definitions, and one of the things that you notice when you start searching through literature on this concept, especially in healthcare, is that there is no commonly agreed upon definition of spirituality or religion. And so people kind of make their own definitions, and then they do their research based on their own definitions. And so there are some that are more widely accepted than others, but there's no like absolute across the board where everybody agrees that this is this and this. So there's some ambiguity there, and I think that's probably always going to be the case because it's really a personal thing, and so there's always going to be those personal differences in how we define ourselves and our own belief system. But I think for the purposes of our discussion here tonight and in the months to come, I'm hoping that we can sort of agree on a basic concept, maybe not a precise definition, but a workable definition for what we're talking about. And maybe that may or may not change your answer as we go along. So just a next question, and I think probably many of you consider yourselves Christian. So who would say that you consider yourself Christian? Okay, so that's most of the people here tonight. And then, is there anyone that wants to kind of be brave and say that you have a non-Christian religious belief system?
Well, I think I'm kind of basically Christian with Buddhist tendencies.
Okay. So, Christian with Buddhist tendencies. That's what you said. Okay. Hey, good for you for speaking out there. Yeah, it's interesting. See what I mean? Like, that's very personal to you. And I'm sure there's other people that may feel the same way, but they might define it differently than you. So, anyway, I've had, well, I'm going to tell stories about that. We could be here all night if I was telling stories about things that I've heard from patients about how they define their spirituality. But there's lots of different ways about that. So our session 1, finding peace in a world of chaos. And I think that's something that all of us can agree would be a good thing for us. Like, I think we all want to have a sense of peace. And for the most part, I think we can all agree that this world is pretty chaotic. There's lots of stuff that happens. I mean, you just look at any random day that you might choose, and whether it's internal stuff or in your family or group of friends, or if you extend that out to look at our wider community, there's all kinds of stuff going on all the time. And it's easy to get kind of, I'm not even sure what the right word for it is, upset, off kilter, like sad, angry, agitated, any of those things when you come in contact with all the stuff that's going on in the world. So tonight we're kind of starting out on this journey and laying a basic conceptual foundation, and so we'll see how it goes. So first of all, I just want to quickly review for the purpose of research. I read an article this week that was a review article on religion and spirituality and health, both physical and mental health. And the author of the review basically said, because there's no general definition of these terms, I'm going to give my own definition. And he proceeded to give his own definition. And then he said, because even these definitions overlap so much, what we're going to do is just lump it all together, and for the purpose of the research, just say religion and spirituality. And how does that affect physical health? And there have been, in the last 20 years, many thousands of studies that have looked at this. Prior to that, there was very few. But if you look back in the late 90s, there began to be an interest. This was when I was in medical school. There were a couple of key researchers, one at Harvard and a couple of other places, very prominent physicians that began to look at this connection and do all sorts of interesting research. And what has been found consistently is that people who are more involved in spiritual and or religious practice generally have better health. When they get sick, they recover faster. They also have better mental health on average. It's not a guarantee, but if you look at large groups of people, this is what they find. And one of the things that really stands out to me as we dig into the research is that there's been a big effort to try to control for other factors. So there's the classic old church lady that goes to church, and it turns out the old church ladies are healthier than the old non-church ladies. And in the beginning, the theory was, well, that's because they have a social group that they're part of. Or, well, they're actually healthier because they're healthier, and so that's why they can go to church, because they're healthier. And so, yeah. So, but over the last 20 years, there's been a lot of efforts to kind of dissect that out and control for those variables. And what's been discovered is that there really is a significant connection between spiritual belief and practice, religiosity, whatever term you want to use, and physical and mental health. One caveat to that is some of the researchers have differentiated between what we call, there's two different types of religiosity. So on the first blank on your handout there, spirituality and intrinsic religiosity, intrinsic as opposed to, what would be the opposite of that? Extrinsic. So intrinsic spirituality and intrinsic religiosity are correlated with better physical and mental health. And very often extrinsic religiosity has not been found to be correlated with better outcomes. So you might want to find out what is extrinsic religiosity. So that's an attempt to tease apart the motivation that people have for their religious practice. So in other words, if you go to church because you love God and you like going to church and you think that's what people should do and you do it, that's correlated with better outcomes. If you go to church because your parents told you that if you don't go to church, you're going to go to hell, and you don't want to disappoint your parents or lose your status in the community, and so you go to church because you feel like there's pressure from other people, that's extrinsic religiosity. It's doing religious things because of external pressure. That's a completely different thing than intrinsic, which has to do with your own personal beliefs and desires based on freely chosen beliefs. I was a little bit circular there, but I think you know what I mean, right? Okay. So now, the question is, let's try to define it just a little bit. And I think it is helpful to have this discussion, even if in the end, thus is not the most important thing to have the right definitions, but I think it's helpful. So, generally speaking, spirituality, I have a definition down here for you. Basic definition of spirituality is connection with the transcendent. And then you want to know, what's a transcendent? Right? So that is something that is kind of beyond the natural realm. So something that transcends nature, transcends our typical human experience. And some sort of connection with that is very sort of broad, general definition of spirituality. Does that make sense? That kind of resonating. And I think that is a lot of times what people mean when they say that they're spiritual but not religious. They have a sort of connection with the universe or the oneness or some sort of spiritual entities beyond normal human existence. I'm sure a lot of people would have their own different variation on that, but that sort of serves as an introductory definition of spirituality. And I suppose I should advance my slides. There we go. A sense of connection with the transcendent or supernatural, we might add. So something beyond nature. Religion is perhaps a bit more difficult to define. People often will say they perceive themselves as spiritual but not religious. But then we lack a common definition of religion. And so I'm giving you one that I made up. I figured if everybody else can make up theirs, I can make up mine. Yeah, hey, I'm as qualified as the next guy. I'm a pastor and a doctor, and I like to read books, so that should qualify me as well as anybody else. So this definition that I'm giving you for religion is kind of a broad, encompassing definition, and so not everything that I would say is a religion or religious necessarily has all of these things, but most religions are going to have some of these things, and pretty much anything that has these things is probably some flavor of religion. Make sense? Maybe it'll make more sense after we go through the list here. So, religion is a set of beliefs and practices. So it has this component of belief and what you do. And is concerning the nature and origin of the universe, the meaning and purpose of life, the existence of and solution for evil, morality, how to deal with guilt, and what happens after death. Would you agree that's a pretty big definition?
Yeah.
That encompasses, I think that encompasses most anything that people would call religion, and probably a few things that most people would not call religion. Okay, so for example, I would categorize, and I don't want to get off too far on the side track here, but I can't help myself once in a while. I would categorize philosophic naturalism as a religion. because it addresses at least beliefs and often practices regarding the nature and origin of the universe, the meaning or purposelessness of life, the existence of evil, morality, how to deal with evil, and what happens after death. So even though the people that believe that don't normally say this is my religion, they normally say, I don't have a religion, but they are having a religion, it's a non-theistic religion. In other words, it's a way of addressing all these things without reference to God. Okay? And so there are non-theistic religions, and there's actually a number of them. Some of them deny the supernatural, and some of them believe in the supernatural, but just not in a theistic way. Everyone following so far? Okay. And I think I added on here supernatural, which is not on my list here, so you can write that in as the last one there. Okay. Now, as you probably would guess, even though this presentation is welcoming and friendly to people of all different religious backgrounds and spiritual practices, it's informed by my religious beliefs and practices. And so the basic concepts that we're going to be sharing, many of you will be familiar with, but I'm going to just challenge you, if what I'm saying is not something you're familiar with, or maybe it's not even something you are sure if you believe, to kind of hang on through the presentation and then try it out. That's how we came up with the name for this program, Taste and See. Try it out, see what it's like, see if it brings you joy, see if it works for you. And you might find that it does. Then I'd be excited about that. All right. So the first concept here is that human beings were created for connection. And I think most thoughtful people and anybody that works in the humanities, whether they believe in creation or not, they understand that human beings desire connection and are inherently set up to make connections with other people. And that's an important part of our existence. And I think that that's an important part of spirituality as well. So my definition of spirituality includes a little bit more than just a connection with something out there, some sort of transcendent energy or spirit world, but it includes connection among human beings. I think that's an important part of it. And we'll talk about how that fits as we go along. The next thing is here that the connection that we were created for has been broken. And I don't know if you notice this, if you look around the world at all the people that you know and all the relationships around you, you see a lot of them are broken, for lack of a better word. There's people struggling with making connections in all sorts of different ways. And there's a lot of difficulty in the world. And if we think that spirituality is connection with the transcendent, and you see so many people don't have that. So we were created to have that connection, and it's not there anymore. Something happened that severed that connection. And that's why we can have a seminar like this, because it's not an automatic thing. There's something needs to be done to restore that connection that we were created for. And the third point here is that we're all born as broken people want to tell you that this has been kind of a growing realization for me. The more people I interact with, and the more I think deeply about my own challenges in life, I realize we're all broken at some level. I used to think that was just for other people. But I realized that I was born cracked, same as everybody else. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate that. And so what we find is that all of us, when we come into this world, we don't automatically have this connection with the transcendent, with the divine, whatever the connection is supposed to be with. And we also don't automatically have that connection with the people around us. All of those connections are broken, and we ourselves are broken, not all in the same way necessarily, but that's part of what makes the mess. It's like we're all broken and damaged in different ways, and here we are trying to connect with other broken and damaged people, and that is hard work and scary and messy sometimes. And so that's kind of the purpose of what we're talking about tonight, is how do we move from that into a connection with the transcendent that transforms our brokenness into something beautiful. So I'm going to talk about connection for a second. So when we talk about connection, probably the easiest for us to understand is what I call the horizontal connection. That is connection with other people. Okay? We all understand the concept of having a friend that you can depend on. We probably all understand the concept of falling in love with someone and maybe having your heart broken. And that stuff that happens in relationships, right? So we know that we all have connections. We come into this world and we have, by design, we're supposed to have a mother and a father, and that kind of is supposed to be our kind of automatic connection that we call it a family. But so many families in this world are so broken in so many different ways. A lot of times, we get started with some connection there, but it's not necessarily a healthy connection, and then it kind of goes sideways from there. Sometimes we have really good connections with other people, so I don't want to paint it as all bad. I don't believe it's all bad. I think there's a lot of good there too. But one of the things that challenge us are the difficult ones, the difficult relationships, or the broken connections, or the desire for connection that just doesn't work the way it seems like it's supposed to. And then we have the vertical connection, the connection between us and the supernatural. And that also is challenging for us. I mean, most people maybe I shouldn't say most people. Say a lot of people totally neglect that. They just kind of go through life, and if they have, if they have a big screen TV and a 6-pack of beer, they're happy. Like, at least sort of happy, right? And I think you used to be in that camp, kind of. I didn't know you back in those days, but I've heard you mention it before.
You're still always looking for connection.
Yeah. So there was something missing, but you thought, like, hey, this is how I'm going to find that. And you found out that it didn't work that way. You got into a different path that's turned out better for you. Yeah. So here's one of the key points that I want to make tonight. When our connection with the supernatural is broken, our connection with the natural becomes broken as well. Okay, let me repeat that. When our connection with the supernatural is broken, then our connection with the natural world around us, the people around us, those connections become broken as well. Okay, that's not to say that if somebody disregards spirituality that they can't be in a relationship with someone, because obviously people do that all the time. But in a general sense, and in the fullest sense of connection and relationship, what we find is that when that vertical connection is not there, it significantly impedes healthy relationships on the horizontal as well. So now we're going to talk about the source of spirituality. And I'm just going to take a little aside here to tell a story about someone that I work with. And this person was interesting. And I haven't had an in-depth discussion with her about exactly what her spiritual belief system is. Although I know that she practices some type of Christianity, but she also depends heavily on yoga for her spiritual connection with the transcendent. And so one morning, she always goes to yoga for an hour before coming to work in the morning. And I remember this, it was just a couple of months ago, this very, very distinct event that happened. She came in from yoga class just saying how wonderful it was, how she was just so at peace and in tune, and the breath and everything was just wonderful. And she got started with work, and about half an hour later, she was frazzled, she was upset, she was kind of growling at people a little bit. She turned and looked at me and said, "How come I just can't keep that peace from the yoga all through my day?" And I thought about it. I didn't give her an answer right then because I didn't think she was ready to hear what I would have told her. But it got me thinking. And so this program, this series is part of the answer to that question. And she's not here tonight, but we are recording it. I'm going to make sure she gets to listen to it. And I told her I was going to tell the story, so promote that. I think that's a thing that happens to a lot of people. It's kind of easy to go to a yoga class, or go out in the woods, or find a monastery somewhere, and sit quietly and contemplate whatever, and just kind of be at peace. I know, for me, it's really easy when I'm out in the woods. We like to go backpacking. It's one of my favorite things to do. And I do find it's really easy. You go sit on top of a mountain somewhere and look around and just thank God for everything that's out there. It feels so wonderful, breathing that fresh air, running around barefoot in the woods, and then you gotta come back to relax. And the challenge is to bring that spiritual, transcendent peace and tranquility into everyday life when you have 3 or 4 patients waiting and 5 of them are mad at you, and there's a stack of papers like this and there's 3 people on the phone. Can you still keep that peace and that tranquility and that calm?
Yes.
That's an important question, I think. And one of the suggestions that I have that may be a little counter to what some people have heard or believe, and that is that we don't find the solution for that inside. The solution for that comes from a higher power, just like they say in 12-step programs. We need a power greater than ourselves to help us with that. And so today in the world, there's many streams of spirituality that are just looking inside to find that spirituality, and they're they're finding something, and it feels good a lot of the time for many of them. But it falls short of meeting the potential and of meeting what we're designed for. And I believe that is for connection with the higher power, not just an inner power. So that's one of the important concepts that I'm going to suggest for consideration. That we actually need that connection with the transcendence that is above us, beyond us, greater than us, in order to have the power to maintain that peace and tranquility in a world of chaos. Now, an interesting question, and I'm just going to acknowledge that there are various philosophical systems that will say, yes, there is a source of power that's outside of us, and some of those will refer to that as a personal power and some as an impersonal, kind of like the universe. The universal oneness is not a personal thing, and that would be more similar to a Buddhist conception of the universe, that there's this great oneness that we're supposed to be connected to, but it's not really a personal entity, it's just an impersonal power. And that would be in contrast with a theistic type of supernatural understanding, where the power that's greater than us is the actual personal being. And in Christianity and many religions, we call that God. And so that has some interesting implications. Interesting implications just philosophically, but also on a practical level. And practically, when we start talking about connection, we know that on a horizontal level, we connect with other people. And so you're a real person, and I'm a real person. And when we come into a relationship, we're two people in a relationship, two beings that are choosing to relate to each other in some way. And the concept of the power of the universe as an impersonal thing is very different than that. But for Christians at least, and I would say for other theistic religions in general, that power we think of as a personal entity, a personal being. So when we talk about connecting with the higher power, talking about connecting with God, that's a personal relationship with a power that's outside of and greater than myself. And I believe that God is the God that created us for the purpose of having that connection. That puts a little different spin on it than just there's this universe that we're supposed to connect with. You think that there's actually a God who created everything, who created you with the purpose in mind of connecting with you in a meaningful way in a relationship. That means a lot more to me personally. Okay. So our power is the God of creation. And so this is the point at which I want to invite everyone who may hear this here or in the future on the recording. If you're not 100% sure about what I just said, about there being a God that created you and wants to connect with you, I'm going to invite you to try it out, and we're going to give some exercises in a couple of minutes to do that. So even if you're not 100% sure that you really believe it, you can still try it out and see what happens. And I just want to challenge you with that. There's a scripture that says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good. Happy is the one who trusts in Him." so maybe you're not ready to trust yet, but you can taste and see. Try it out. So I'm going to challenge you with that. And just to define this a little bit more, the God that we're talking about, the God of the Bible, the Bible tells us that God is love. And so we don't mean that in the way of that's a sum total of the idea of God is just this feeling of love that people have for their pizza. And that's not what we're talking about. But in a that was kind of funny, wasn't it? No? Okay. In a very real sense, though, the idea of love is part of the core essence of this being that we call God. And that has some pretty profound theological implications for doctrinal teachings that we're not going to get into tonight. But it also has some pretty profound practical implications. We're talking about having a relationship with this God that is love. And isn't that what we all crave at the deepest level in our heart and soul? Is to have a relationship with a being that loves us, someone that knows all of our stuff, all of our junk, all of our brokenness, and that loves us anyway. And in fact, if we understand it, the concept of God, God knew how we were going to mess up. And he could have chosen to not create us, sort of like a cosmic abortion. But God chose to create us anyway, knowing that we were going to mess up. He said, you know what? Even though you were going to mess up, I love you so much. I wanted to have a relationship with you, so I created you. And I understand that you have these challenges, but let me connect with you, and we'll figure out how to make that better. We can fix that, and we can move on and make something great out of that. So, God is love, and I think that has to be one of the foundations for a more meaningful spirituality. So here's my enhanced definition of spirituality. You can find it down there with a place to fill in the blanks. Connection with God in such a way that his love transforms me and flows through me to others. I just want to have you envision something for a second. If you've ever been hiking along a little mountain stream, have you ever seen that little waterfall coming down into the pool, and then the water kind of goes out different ways and flows around and reconnects into the stream? And we can think of ourselves kind of like that pool. And our connection with God, our connection with the transcendence is like the waterfall flowing into us and filling us up. And then it flows out. And what happens is that if somehow there's a disconnect there so that water is not flowing down and filling that pool, how long does that pool keep on flowing out? It doesn't. Not for very long. And that's what happens with us as human beings. When that vertical connection with God as the source and the power of love and spirituality and all good things, when that's interrupted, then we tend to dry up. And yeah, we might have a little love around, but it's just like a mud puddle. It's not the crystal clear flowing stream that we all want to enjoy. Does that make sense? It's kind of how it works. And so, in order for us to have this flowing stream flowing out from us, we have to have a constant infilling of this stream. And that's the only way to maintain a sense of calm and joy and love and peace in the midst of the chaos all around us. Because if we're not being filled from above, we're going to be filled with stuff that's coming in from the sides, which is all this stuff around us, and it's not all good stuff. We need to be a source. After being filled, we become a source of good stuff to go out and to help others to experience the connection that we're designed for, and hopefully encourage them into the deeper spirituality of their own. And then that's amazing when you're in a relationship with other people that are also in a relationship with God as a source of love, and it just becomes a good thing in so many different ways. And it starts to heal the brokenness of this world. Okay, so just to kind of summarize our thoughts for the evening, and then we're going to move on to discussing the assignments. God is love. You were created for a connection with God. That's your predestiny as a human being. That's the purpose for which you were created, among other things. But that's a primary purpose. And God desires a personal connection with you. And then we're going to close out with another scripture. And this is one that I come back to frequently. And I recommend it. This is written in Isaiah, and it's written as the writer is speaking to God about the attributes of God. And it says, "You will keep in perfect peace the one whose mind is resting on you." For those of you that want to know what translation that is, I just read it out. It's my own translation. It's actually there. You can go look it up. There's different translations, but this is my translation. So if you prefer a different translation, you're welcome to stick with whatever you're used to. But this gets the essence of it, that when our mind is resting on God and connected with Him and His love, then that allows us to maintain peace in the midst of chaos. So, now we have, on the back of the page, I've given you all 4 weeks worth of exercises. I don't want you to do them all at once. I want you to actually do them week by week, the way I wrote it out. I thought about just mailing them to you every week, but then I figured Vicki would be perhaps overwhelmed, and I dumped that on her to do that. So I didn't do that. I put them all here. But actually try to follow the sequence, okay? And if this seems too elementary to you and you're already advanced beyond this, at least do this much in actual practices. So before we get to the actual spiritual exercises, a kind of an odd thing to put in the Talking Spirituality, get on Facebook and find our Facebook page. If you're on Facebook. If you're not on Facebook, you don't have to join. I'm not saying that. But if you're already on Facebook, we actually set up a, help me out with the term here,
Group.
private, closed group on Facebook. So if you're already on Facebook, you go to Scott Valley Taste and See. You have to ask to join. One of us has to approve you in order to get on there. But it's a place for people that are on Facebook to share their experiences as we go along between this meeting and next month. We're probably not all going to see each other all the time, but we can post stuff on there. And I would encourage you, if you are on Facebook, go there, join the group. As you're trying this out, leave a comment on how's it going. If you have questions, post them up there. I'll try to answer them for you. And we can kind of create a little private, closed community put a quote with each one of these assignments. The first one is, nothing tends more to promote health of body and soul than does a spirit of gratitude and praise. So the first week, the assignment is to spend time every morning expressing gratitude to God. And I know a lot of people that consider themselves to be spiritual and not religious may have a practice of gratitude. I hear people talk about practicing gratitude, and I think that's wonderful. We should all practice gratitude because we have so much to be thankful for. But what I'm suggesting is specifically gratitude directed toward God as the source of spirituality and as a personal being that is responsible for us being here. So take a few minutes every morning to just direct your thoughts toward God and say thank you. And start to express your gratitude for everything that you have to be thankful for. And you'll find out a few minutes is not enough time. And we could talk about everything from the ground up. Literally, you could thank God for the dirt. Because without the dirt, where would you put your feet? Where would you plant your seeds? The trees have to grow somewhere. It's such wonderful stuff that is there for us. And the water, and the trees, and the birds, and the flowers, and the sky, and the clouds, and the planets, and the stars, and the constellations, and the whatever other spirit beings are out there in the universe, all the way up to God himself, just to express gratitude for all the blessings that we receive, and to express that and thank God for that. So that's my first assignment. Easy enough? Get started? Okay, fairly simple. All right, week 2, we're going to add to that. So the quote here, our prayers will take the form of a conversation with God as we would talk with a friend. He will speak his mysteries to us personally. Often there will come to us a sweet, joyful sense of the presence of Jesus. And so the assignment is to continue with the expression of gratitude. I recommend the best time to do that is when you become conscious in the morning. Why is that funny?
It happens sooner some than others.
All right. So whenever that is, that you wake up and you realize you're still alive, okay, start expressing gratitude to God, but then also begin to share with God as you would with a friend, whatever's on your heart. So it may be just all gratitude, or it may be you're worried about something. Share that with God. It may be that you need something, or it may be that you're angry about something. I don't know what it may be, but whatever's on your heart, realize that God created you for connection. He wants to connect with you. And part of that is you opening to God what's in your heart and sharing that, just like you would as if he was your best friend. Did you have a question? Comment? No? Okay.
Are we supposed to keep this personal, or can we ask for others at the same time?
If that's what's on your heart. So if you wake up in the morning and you're just really, something's on your heart about, I don't know, somebody that you know, your friend so-and-so that's in, physical therapy for the accident. Absolutely, you can open to God and say, God, I'm just really worried about my friend. And I hope he's going to be okay. And it'd be great if you would go, connect with him too. Or, I just made that up, but, right? Whatever's on your heart. If that's what's on your heart, fine. If it's something else, that's okay too. I'm not specifying what form it has to take. Just share what's in your heart and open that to God. Okay? Now, and then along with that, ask God to help you feel His presence. Because we're talking about having this personal connection with the transcendence. And that's something you can actually get a sense of as we're talking to God. Traditionally in Christianity we call that prayer. Right? People have different definitions of prayer too. But that's kind of what we're talking about. It's like meditation, prayer. Yeah, it's that whole thing. And so as we're communicating with God, that's one of the things that we can ask God. God, help me to sense your presence with me. And I'm choosing to believe that you made me for connection, and I want to connect with you, and so help me to feel that connection with you today. It can be as simple as that. Put it in your own words when you get the idea. Right? Then on week 3, the quote, when, notwithstanding disagreeable circumstances. What does that mean?
Troubles are going to happen.
When stuff happens in life that's not exactly what you would have wished for, which is most days of the week for some of us, when, notwithstanding disagreeable circumstances, we rest confidingly in His love and shut ourselves in with Him, the sense of His presence will inspire a deep, tranquil joy. That's an amazing thought, isn't it? So it's not so much that we shut ourselves in as in we go in the closet and we triple bolt the door and refuse to come out. It's the idea that the presence of God is actually with us throughout the day. So the assignment for week 3 is to continue expressing gratitude, opening your heart to God, asking Him to help you to sense His presence with you, and then remind yourself of that throughout the day. And how did I put it here? I guess I should advance the slide here. Here we go. Begin to practice recognizing His presence and staying connected throughout the day as you go about your normal activities. So whether you're gardening or exercising or at work, on the computer, begin to start practicing to remind yourself that you connected with God in the morning and that God is still there with you. His presence is everywhere. That's a Christian teaching, but that goes along with lots of other spiritual traditions also have a similar idea. This presence is everywhere, but God's presence is everywhere. It's just that we sometimes forget about it and get all wrapped up in our own problems and forget that we set out to have a day with God. And so I'm just suggesting to spend that week kind of focusing on that throughout the day. Just remind yourself, and then kind of turn your heart back to God and reconnect with Him. Ask Him to help you with that. Is that fairly clear? Okay. And then the last one, last quote here, all who have indeed become acquainted by experimental knowledge with the love and tender compassion of our Heavenly Father will impart light and joy wherever they may be. Their presence and influence will be to their associates as the fragrance of sweet flowers, because they are linked to God in heaven, and the purity and exalted loveliness of heaven are communicated through them to all that are brought within their influence. Isn't that a wonderful description of spirituality? Wouldn't we all like to be like that every day, so that people just sense there's something about this person? I just like being with them because it's such a good experience to be around them. And that's what it means. To me, that is kind of the essence of spirituality. And so on that fourth week, I want you to specifically focus on just that, asking God to do this for you, to fill you with His love so that it flows out to the other people around you. Yeah. So that's getting to like real practical stuff there when we start thinking about those times when we don't really feel like loving the people around us. That's real spirituality there. Okay? So this is an introduction. Next month, I was thinking about the title. I was thinking I might entitle it Know Thyself, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. That might be a good title. I'm going to be talking about human nature. And we'll be taking a little look at ourselves and how we actually function. And then we'll be connecting that back into an understanding of spirituality and how we can go the next step into a deeper and more resilient spirituality than what we often find ourselves with. So that's the topic for next month. And do we have any questions before we go?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So, if we know we're not going to be at one of these, where do we go to look at the video?
Okay.
Do we know that?
So, we're hoping to throw it up on the Facebook page and also on our church YouTube channel. So if you're not on Facebook, you can still go to YouTube and find it. So the Facebook page is Scott Valley Taste and See, and then our YouTube channel is, help me out, Scott Valley Seventh-day Adventist Church, Scott Valley SDA Church.
I could email it too, because mostly
You-
everybody I have emails. No, I don't have any.
Okay? Yeah. And of course, so once we get our production done and we get that up there, we'll try to let you know. And then the same thing in the future for each of the following events. We'll try to make sure we get the video up and also the handouts available attached to the video as a thing, however they do that. I'll have my people take care of that. Yes. Yes.
So if I cannot accomplish this homework, I'm not allowed to come back?
Oh, wow. So you are allowed to come back, even if you don't complete all the homework. But you're highly encouraged to try it every day. And if you make a mistake or you skip a day, that's not the end of the world. Just wake up the next time you wake up, start expressing gratitude again, and start over again. Yeah, I think if we all got disqualified whenever we didn't do everything right, then we'd all be disqualified. Fortunately.
I have a feeling I'm going to stay in week 1 all 4.
Oh, okay. It's not the type of assignment where you have to do this perfectly in order to go to the next piece. It's something to practice, and that's something to practice for the rest of our lives. It's not just you go, well, I'm going to get this down this week, and the next week I'm going to do something else. It's practice this kind of. That's one thing to focus on for the week, and then you can add a little bit to that and add a little bit as you go along. But however it works for you is okay. This is some suggestions. Okay? All right. Well, we'll hope to see you all next month and have fun with the journey.